Hey everyone, this is Theo. Welcome to another product review. Adonit has sent over a new stylus for me to check out, and this is the Adonit Ink. This is a stylus that is made specially to work with Windows tablet devices, more specifically the Microsoft Surface devices and also selected Windows touchscreen devices like those 2-in-1 computers. Alright, so in today's review I will be doing some demo with this stylus and also compare it with the Surface Pen. Adonit Ink comes in 3 different colors. The one that I have here is blue. There are also the black and silver body options that you can choose. The design looks very simple. It's a cylindrical body with a matte, smooth, metallic body, and this is actually quite nice to touch and to hold in hand. This stylus is slightly lighter compared to the Surface Pen, but overall it feels quite nice to hold. One of the highlights for this stylus is the 1mm tip. I really like the design of this tip because when you are drawing, this tip, it doesn't block off the lines that are beneath it. So this is a very functional design. Now it may seem that the tip has some matte surface on it, but actually when you're using it on the glass surface, it is definitely more slippery compared to the Microsoft Surface Pen. And this tip is removable and replaceable, so if it gets worn out, you can just unscrew this and replace it with another tip that is sewed separately. It takes a while to unscrew this, but it looks like this. When you put the tip back into the pen, make sure to screw it on tightly. I find that sometimes when I'm drawing, it gets loose a bit, so I have to screw it back on again, so make sure to screw this on very tightly. Here's how the tip of Adonit Ink compares to the Apple Pencil and the Surface Pen 2017. There are 2 side buttons on the stylus. This first button here, this has been configured to the eraser function, and this button at the back, that's the right click. Now to switch on the stylus, you just have to press down the first button here for 2 seconds and that green light will light on. And to switch it off, you have to press both buttons and wait for the red light to come on and it will turn off. So there's actually a battery inside that is rechargeable. You have to charge it through this port at the back. This is a micro USB charging port, and the only other accessory that comes with this pen is this charging cable. So this side will go into the back of the pen, and this is the USB connector. Battery life of this stylus is rated to last for 80 hours, so if you draw non-stop each day for 10 hours straight, it's going to last you 8 days, and that's pretty decent battery life, but definitely not as long compared to the 6 months to 1 year's battery life on the Surface Pen. And oh, there's this little clip here at the back. So what are the main physical differences between Adonit Ink and the Surface Pen? Well, the first thing is the tip. So this tip here is more slippery compared to the tip on the Surface Pen. The Surface Pen tip has more friction and it provides slightly better control when it comes to drawing. On the Surface Pen, there is only 1 side button, that's the right click button. On the Adonit Ink, we have the right click button at the back, and this button here is mapped to the eraser. And on the back of the Surface Pen, we have the eraser, but on the Adonit Ink, the eraser is mapped to this button. And lastly, there is a strong magnet inside the Surface Pen which allows it to snap very tightly to the side of the Surface Pro. This makes it very easy to transport the pen around. Unlike the Surface Pen, which is always on, before you can use the Adonit Ink, you have to switch it on first. But thankfully, it's very quick. You just have to press this for 1 to 2 seconds and the green light will turn on. To switch off the stylus, you have to press both buttons at the same time. The thing is, I always forget to switch off the stylus, and so far the battery life, it has been quite alright, so I suppose the pen would switch itself off after a period of inactivity. And just like the Surface Pen, this stylus also supports palm rejection and pressure sensitivity. However, I'm not too sure how many levels of pressure that this Adonit ink can support, but it's definitely not as sensitive compared to the Surface Pen. So now I'm going to launch some graphic apps to show you the strokes that it can create. Let me launch Medibang Paint Pro first. I'm going to draw a series of strokes on the left side with Adonit ink and then switch over to using Surface Pen to draw the same strokes on the right side so that you can compare the differences. And I'm not sure if you can see clearly, but there is this cursor here. So this is an active pen, that's why there is the cursor that follows the tip around, and this is why you can get perfect palm rejection. I'm now drawing as lightly as possible with Adonit ink. And let me switch over to the Surface Pen. Again, I'm drawing very lightly. What I can say for certain is the Surface Pen is more sensitive when it comes to drawing very lightly, so you can get thin lines like this very easily. As long as the tip is touching the glass screen, you can get very light and thin lines like this. However, if I were to do the same with Adonit ink, the lines that I get will be slightly thicker compared to the Surface Pen. And now I'm going to draw some diagonal lines very slowly to see if there is any jitter or if the line wobbles. I would say that there is slight jitter, but it's not as bad compared to other stylus that I have used. Let me compare that to the Surface Pen. From what I can see, the lines from the Surface Pen, they definitely have less jitter compared to Adonit ink. But I would say that this type of performance, this is actually considered quite respectable, especially when you compare it to other types of styluses. And now let's see how Adonit ink handles curves. Here's a close-up of what I have just drawn. So for this part here, this is definitely not as smooth as I want it to be. So there is some variation in terms of thickness. And here you can see that this line, this part here, it's not able to get me an uniform stroke when I was drawing like this. I noticed that this is a problem when I'm drawing thicker lines. For thinner lines, I usually do not get those variations in stroke, maybe because I'm not using any pressure at all. And now let's switch over to using the Surface Pen and see what I can get. With the Surface Pen, the lines are smoother and the lines came out exactly the way I want them to be. And also the transition between thin and thick is also very gradual, very smooth. So does this mean that Adonit ink is not good for drawing? Well, I think it's got to do with what you draw and what you use the stylus for. For example, now I'm drawing a cartoon character with a lot of curves, and overall it still works quite well. So sometimes the strokes may have some variation in terms of thickness. For example, here I can see some slight variation, but overall it's still quite smooth. Let's test out the eraser, which is mapped onto this first button. So I'm going to erase this part here, which I have accidentally overdrawn. So let me just press that button and just erase it slightly. So the eraser works with Medibang Paint Pro. This is Sketchable. Let's compare the two styluses again. So That's Adonit Ink, and this is the Surface Pen. Let's zoom in. So for this line here, again, I can see that it's not smooth. There is the variation in thickness here, and also here, and also here. But for Surface Pen, you can see that it's really very smooth. Let's draw the same thing again. Most of the curves are smooth, but some parts are definitely not as smooth. For example, here. Let's try some hatching. I think it works quite well with hatching. Let's switch over to Surface Pen. So for hatching, I would say that Adonit Ink, it performs almost exactly the same as the Surface Pen. Let's try and draw a diagonal line very slowly. So I can see some jitter. Let's switch over to Surface Pen. Almost no jitter at all. Eraser works here as well. I want to show you Mischief. With Mischief, I can see that the lines are exceptionally smooth. There is almost none of the jitter, so the transition between thin to thick, it's very smooth, very gradual, and even for the thick lines, I do not see any of those jitter. So for Mischief, I think they probably do some sort of software correction to the strokes to make them a bit smoother. This is Krita. So with Krita, the effect, the jitter is even more pronounced. And this is Photoshop. Everything looks quite smooth here with Photoshop. So the performance of the Stylus is definitely dependent on the app that you use. This is Wacom bamboo paper, one of my favorite apps for taking notes. And the curves here, they are very smooth. Let me do some handwriting sample. Let me switch over to using the Surface Pen. Both styluses are quite good at taking notes, and here my handwriting from both the styluses, they are captured quite accurately. Because this tip here is a hard tip, when writing you're going to get those tapping sounds. Alright, so what's my overall recommendation? When it comes to drawing, the Surface Pen performs better compared to Adonit Ink. When it comes to drawing lighter lines, the Surface Pen is more sensitive, and when it comes to drawing heavier lines, the Adonit Ink sometimes can have that jitter effect. The lines may not be as smooth compared to the Surface Pen. If you are going to use the stylus to draw very often, I would recommend Surface Pen. If you are just using the stylus to draw occasionally, to take some notes, or if you are just looking for general purpose stylus, then Adonit Ink may be enough to suit your needs, and this is much more affordable compared to the Surface Pen. That's all for today's review. I hope this video is helpful in some way. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye!